We have had some changes in our lineup tonight, but wonderful changes. I have the opportunity to introduce a very, very good friend of mine. Iman Dai, I've known for quite some time. Iman Dai Abdullah, who is the Imam for the Light of Reform Mosque and the leader of Muslims for Progressive Values. And we have the opportunity to share in some very dangerous situations in our history together. I am very thrilled that he is here. He also serves at the Masjid Light of Reform in Washington, D.C., and it is a unity mosque. He is one of a kind. Would you welcome, please, Iman Dai Abdullah? Wave your hand there, brother, so the folks know who you are. We also want to welcome to this panel tonight another very good friend and brother who has a new and peculiar designation given to him by Bishop Carlton Pearson in the not too recent past, who called him the head of the gay organization in the United Church of Christ. The head gay, he called him the head gay of the gay organization in the United Church of Christ, and we have from that time given him that designation. So I want to introduce formally the head gay of the gay organization, Reverend Mike Schoenemeyer, who is in fact the executive director of the United Church of Christ Office of HIV and AIDS Network, a member of the planning team for the pre-faith event. He is also a member of the leadership team for the Coalition for Gay and Lesbian Concerns, and he is responsible in the United Church of Christ for all of those issues that relate to LGBT, the LGBT community, and our presence. And we're very glad to have him here. Let's give him another hand. I want to welcome Jan Sodal. And Jan is the project coordinator of the One Body Project, Christian Council of Norway, soon to be moving to City Mission, involved in a cooperation between the National Association of Gay and Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgender Folks in Norway and the Gay and Lesbian Coalition of Kenya. An incredible brother. Let's welcome him to be a part of our panel tonight. Our brother, Robert Mukandiwa from Zimbabwe, is both a journalist who has covered HIV/AIDS issues in a context where perceived sexual orientation can result in persecution, and he is an activist, busily doing this work in Zimbabwe, a place where we spend and have spent many, 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 many days over the last several years. I am very personally aware of the kind of effort and determination that it takes to bring issues of equality around sexual orientation to the forefront in Zimbabwe, and we welcome you, brother. I'm so glad that you're here. Yeah. Maxinisa Sia Takurambule, what a fabulous name, from Uganda, is founder of Langugi Community Health Care Organization, a faith-based and indigenous non-governmental organization ministering to orphans and women and providing psychosocial, spiritual, and economic support to terminally ill patients and their families. Let's welcome her. Come on. And finally, our brother McDonald Simbreka from Malawi is the regional coordinator of Southern Africa working on AIDS and human rights, and is an ordained Anglican priest living with HIV. Now let's let the whole panel know how happy we are to have them here. Everybody. So let me set context for our conversation, and then we'll have these 3 questions that we will pose to our panel tonight. And again, if you have questions, things come up for you. If you're like me, you have to write things down when they're on your mind. And I suggest that you make a note to yourself as we go along in this conversation of things that you'd like to have clarity about or expansive ideas and such as we go along. There's a growing movement right now in our world that challenges a theology which allows religious institutions and faith-based organizations to be closed, insular, private social clubs, and is calling on them to become more involved in the real life of our communities. This shift is enabling the celebration of diversity and the inclusion of all people, especially those who have traditionally been marginalized, particularly by religious institutions and cultures that have traditionally marginalized the other. Yet there is often a heavy price to pay for individual religious leaders and their congregations and their faith groups who make this courageous change. In many of our organizations, congregations can become bitterly divided around inclusion. Memberships often decrease. Financial stability is affected, and leaders sometimes are removed from positions of authority and endure social ostracism. And their congregations can also experience this same kind of marginalization. However, the end result is the creation of true community. True religious community comes when marginalized people take back the right to fully be. To fully be. And a people must be encouraged to celebrate not in spite of who they are, but because of who their Creator has made them. The balm that heals generational oppression sickness, that's what I've come to call it, handed down oppression sickness, is the creation of accountable and responsible and visible celebrating communities on the margin of mainline religion and dominant society. I want to read a quote to you that Frederick Douglass made when he wrote a piece that is called, "What to the American Slave is Your 4th of July?" And this is what Frederick Douglass said: "For the present, it is enough to affirm the equal manhood of the Negro. It is not as astonishing that while we are plowing and planting and reaping and using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing bridges, building ships, working in metal and brass and iron and copper, while we are secretaries, having among us lawyers and doctors and ministers and poets and authors and editors and orators and teachers, and that while we are engaged in all manner of enterprises common to other men, digging in gold in California, capturing whales in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on a hillside, we're living, moving, acting, thinking, and planning, living in families as husbands and wives and children, and above all, confessing and worshiping God, looking hopefully for life and immortality beyond the grave. We are still called upon to prove that we are men." What an incredible quote from someone who suggested that after all of what he and his people had been through, we still had to prove our personhood. In the fight against AIDS and our service to those living with AIDS, the question is, in the context of sexuality, sexual orientation, and gender, we are often having to prove over and over again in the communities that we are a part of our worth. These sisters and brothers know about this in very real and intimate ways. So we ask the question first to our panel: in the fight against AIDS and service to those who are living with AIDS, how have you experienced the intersections of sexuality, sexual orientation, and gender? And we're going to start all the way down on the other end down there.